What's going on, guys? Bingo here. I'm with the Dual Factory and another special fuck you. And another special guest being YCS champion Marcus Hayden. So I'm gonna let him introduce himself so I don't butcher it like I did last time. So Marcus, you got the floor.
Alrighty. Thanks for having me on, by the way. My name is Marcus Hayden. I play for MetaMats, ex-Titan player, I guess. I've got a couple tops under my belt, and I guess some notable ones are winning YCS Minneapolis and winning ARG St. Louis.
Okay. How long have you been playing the game?
I guess I started playing when I was like 10, but that was like fake where I didn't follow the rules and I played with like my brothers.
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh rules, right?
Yeah, even now we don't follow the rules. No, I'm just kidding.
You got to read cards to follow the rules.
Yeah, right.
Something John lacked.
I guess competitively, I would say 2012. Even though I still sucked, but that's when I started going my first YCS Chicago, 2012. I actually lived in Tennessee at the time, and had gone up there playing Inzectors, which that was a lot of fun. One of my notable losses was round 7 when I was X1 versus Jeff Jones. And then after that, I really didn't start doing well. Like I started doing well at regionals and stuff in 2014, and 2015 is when I had my first top. And it was with Burning Abyss, and I lost in top 16 at that nationals to Matt Klinda, and he ended up going to Worlds. So
wild.
Yeah.
All right.
It makes you feel any better. Me and John have been playing Yu-Gi-Oh about the same amount of time, and we still both suck. So there's that.
No, I definitely started in the winter of 2016. Joe, don't group me in with you.
Don't you sit there and lie to me.
All right,
I mean, it's been on and off too, because like prior to that Nats top, I don't think I played like almost a whole year because like just high school and being in sports and whatnot.
I understand that completely.
Yeah, putting real world priorities in front of a game. Who would have thought?
Right.
All right. So you've been playing quite a while. Obviously, the game's changed drastically from 2012 to right now. Like, it's almost a completely different game.
Oh, yeah, entirely.
But the way you think while you're playing doesn't really change much. So what are some things that you notice that, more mid-tier level players do or don't take into consideration when going into, like, a regional?
I guess like I can speak for myself personally. When I found myself in that boat, a lot of it was I used to focus on trying to only be better with my deck and learning my combos inside and out and stuff like that. And I think doing that will get you to the point where you can probably get your invite. But if you're, your goal should always be to win whatever event you go to. So if you're shooting to win an event, you have to understand a whole lot more than your deck. You have to put in a lot of hours versus other decks and playing other decks. Because unless you understand how every deck works, there's going to be situations that come up that you don't know how to play correctly or encounter correctly. And I guess that was one of the big things, because I used to be like, all right, this is my deck. I'm going to start testing it and, no life play it. And maybe that gets you pretty far in like one deck formats because you're playing the one deck that's like the best deck. But in formats like this, where you got 6, 7, 8, really competitive decks, you're not going to be able to win an event just knowing your deck inside and out unless you are playing like Thunder and won every single die roll. And even then, you probably wouldn't. So
yeah, and that's
the biggest thing.
That's something I notice with the more budget players or the semi-competitive players, where they think that just because they have practiced their deck enough, they don't need to know the Sky Striker matchup, or they don't need to know, the other contenders in the format. So that's definitely a good point. So after you figured that out, obviously understanding the other decks in the format is important. Right. When you go to build a deck, obviously there's always a starting point. Nothing is secret anymore because of the internet. But how do you approach, let's say a regional or YCS coming up in this format? How would you approach it as far as tech cards, just main deck staples, side deck staples? How would you go about looking at the format?
All right, so I guess there's a few things. First, I'd like to say that a lot of my deck building, I get help from Justin Singh. In my opinion, he's the best deck builder of our era. I know that's a big statement to make, but he's who I test with the most, in theory with the most, and he just figures out combos that like no one else would have. Like, I don't know if you remember the Dark Spiral Power Tool combo.
Yeah.
He figured that out. He's figured
By far my favorite spiral combo.
Yeah, he's
Combo
figured
is
out
sick.
just a bunch of things that you probably don't know that he figured out, but he did, and like he's the one who brought it to light. But moving forward onto your question, I guess some of the common things that I do when building a deck, I want a deck to obviously have the highest consistency possible. Math is huge in Yu-Gi-Oh! No matter what anyone says, there's you want to use your hypergeometric calculator to figure out the percentages that you combo or lead to X board, this or that. So consistency is huge. But when deck building, I try to prepare for what you will see most in the main deck and the side deck. I want to side a bare minimum of 5 to 6 cards for every matchup. So you want cards that will overlap. I truly believe that you need to minimize how important die rolls are. That's why I'm a big advocate for decks that are consistent and can play a lot of hand traps. Actually, at the 3v3 YCS, when my team had lost on the bubble to Team ARG, Jeff Jones, Max, and Bowden, me and Justin were playing a Salomon Great deck with 16 or 17 hand traps because we just maxed out all the consistency cards like 3 Foxy, 3 Debug, 3 Gazelle, 3 Quick Play, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we maximized the amount of hand traps because we weren't sure we were going to win die rolls or not, but hand traps, especially at that point in time, were super effective. And what we found versus Thunder is one hand trap almost never did anything, but 2 or 3 almost always stopped them from playing. So by doing so, it just made that matchup way easier. And across the board, a lot of decks can't play through 2 to 3 hand traps. And we just need one card to play, basically.
Okay.
But like I was saying, decks that can be consistent, play hand traps are normally my favorite. Obviously, you have to take like a ceiling into account. Like currently, I think Thunder Dragons has, like the Thunder Dragon Danger deck has by far the highest ceiling. There's multiple times my opponents set up 3 or 4 interruptions, and I'm still able to play through it just fine. Mystic Mind does make it a little scary to play, but that's what your side deck's for, I suppose. But when I say 5 to 6 cards for every matchup, if I'm playing a deck like Salomon Great and I'm siding evenly matched, that covers a lot of matchups. It doesn't cover just it covers when I go second versus Striker, when I go second versus Geist versus Draco, even going second versus Thunder. So long as you have a card that can bait their negate, it's really good. Yeah, cards that just across matchups are good. I hate when people say I side this one card for this one deck because you're just wasting your side deck. Like in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's narrow-minded thinking.
Right.
Outside of like tier 0 formats, of course.
Yeah, obviously, there's exceptions, but in tier 0 formats, you're maining side deck cards. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So that, I guess that's another big thing. Like people, for example, who I'm trying to think of an example. Maybe like siding cherries in a deck where you can't really afford to take out extra cards. So let's say you were playing Salomon Great and you just had cherries in for the mirror. Like that would be really bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because there's other high impact cards that you can be playing going second. I also like cards that can universally go first or second. That would include cards like Super Poly, you know what I mean, that are really good across a lot of decks that you can side in at whether you go first or second across matchups.
Yeah.
That's really important because, I've just grown to the point where you need to accept you're not going to win die rolls. It seems like more often than not, and I'm sure everyone feels this way, that I don't. I guess the one exception would be when I topped YCS, the one in Utah, Salt Lake. And I won like so many die rolls that event, and I didn't even lie. Like I took my deck profile and I was playing Pen FTK, and it was like, yeah, honestly, I just won a bunch of die rolls, and that's why I topped. But yeah, so I've just grown though, for the most part, to be accepting of when you don't, and rather than complaining about it, to prepare for it.
Okay, so you talked quite a bit about the hypergeometric calculator, not just saying I'm going to win every die roll, but
right.
One thing we didn't touch on is, you mentioned a little bit, was consistency versus power.
Right.
So right now, I would say you're playing the most powerful deck in the format easily, but it's definitely not the most consistent, because it does have those wonky hands where, you just open 2 Thunder Dragons, like a Roar and, an Extender or something, like where you just can't play.
Right.
So what made you want to, say give up Salamangreat, which is extremely consistent, but the boards it puts up are not very scary. So what made you want to switch from consistency to more so power?
All right. Well, first thing, if I'm being honest, if Super Poly weren't at 2, I'd probably still be playing Salamangreat, because I love that it can play a ton of hand traps, and I love that it's so consistent. But the fact that everyone can side 2 of that card, and it's almost just an auto win.
Yeah, it's kind of unfair.
Yeah, it's gross, and since it's going to be in everybody's side deck, or at least should be in almost everybody's side deck, that's not something I was prepared to deal with. But with Thunder, the thing I like is that everyone currently wants to go first, and I think Thunder is one of those decks that, obviously, if you go first, you also have the auto win, but it's a lot better at going second into go first boards than most decks. So you do cut down your consistency, though it's really hard to prove the math on that, because Thunder's a deck of
there's so much variance in
so many
Thunder.
2 and 3 and 4 card combos.
Yeah,
there's combos with the deck that you could have 4 cards that could turn into a full board, or also can just be a brick, depending on
your danger hits.
Yeah, on a danger hit, on
So that's what I've noticed with Thunder myself. It's just it doesn't seem very straight and narrow, but there's 5, 6, 7, 8 different avenues with almost every hand you can do where you can actually full combo.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a lot of hand traps you can play too. So or play through, I should say.
No, and that's the other thing. The other thing I like about it is, if piloted by a good player, it gives you a lot of opportunities to play around cards that you otherwise wouldn't be able to play around. Like with Salamangreat, if I open, quick play spell, 3 hand traps, and something else, I have to play that quick play spell first and attempt to play my game. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas with this deck, I can have 2 dangers, a Thunder Dragon, I don't know, a normal summon, and a chaos monster.
Yeah.
And it gives me a lot of options. I can either lead with the danger, I can lead with the normal summon. I might normal and right away link into something to see if I could bait something, or you know what I mean? So it gives you, like you said, a lot more branches to play with, and I think that's very huge, especially in a game that it's getting harder for good players to not per se do well, but outplay their opponents, because a lot of decks are if I play an Orcus player, that deck's literally a ton of 1 and 2 card combos that end with 5 to 6 interruptions, and you just have to memorize that combo, sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. Danger Thunder, there's so much variance in the hands that you're dealt and the resolution of your cards that you never know where you can go with it until you're already almost there. But the Orcus combo, anyone can memorize their Wombo combo, right? Salamangreat's not very scary. Sky Striker, I really don't know why people are still playing that. It's a good deck, but
if I don't get the prize card, I'd probably play Salamangreat or Altergeist, to be honest.
I mean, that's a fair... Altergeist has never been a bad deck. It just had a lot of side hate, so I could see that.
Yeah,
it just got phased out by newer decks, honestly.
In my opinion, the biggest issue with Geist, because I hate when people say you lose to evenly matched, because that card's so easy to play around. With spoofing, you literally have a spell and trap negator that you link into, and you have a bounce with Silquatus. There's so many cards that like play around that card and make it like less good. And if they want to waste their battle phase, that's fine. And what's really nice about the deck is that it can play Mystic Mine and turn it off or match your opponent's monsters so easily, just because how the deck's mechanically works. That's like the big turn on this format, I guess. But the only issue I had with that deck is red reboot. That's like, because there's no way you can play around that.
That's such a...
Why drop the deck? 100%.
Yeah, that card, like, I love playing it just because I hate dealing with traps sometimes, but it's kind of like Lancia, where it just kind of feels like, okay, you just shut off every card in my hand or every playable card that I have. Like,
right. The other thing is with Lancia, believe it or not, I think Thunder plays through that card better than people give it credit for. Because, like, yes, it turns off your Chaos Engine, but a normal summon plus, like, 1 to 2 dangers can still turn into, a board that at least ends with, like, a Colossus and an Interruption.
Saying, yeah, a lot of the times you can end on, like, for me, what I noticed, because I got Lancia'd a lot last Saturday. Okay. I noticed a lot of the times you can end on your like hot red, or you can end on 38, and you can still end on multiple Colossus and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, obviously, it's not always going to happen. It is a card that can shut down your turn, but I hate cards that, like,
linger.
It's not guaranteeing anything. Whereas, like, if I, it's a bad example, but if I use Ash, I know it's going to stop a search. Whereas if I use a card like Lancia, I'm losing a card in hand that may very well not, like, stop them.
Yeah, it could stun them to the point where, they just pass, or it could very minimally affect their turn.
It's a high impact card, but it's a high impact for both players, because in one situation it can be completely broken, or in the other situation it just backfires and you're just out of card.
Right, and unless you're playing like the Mirror, where all you need to do is stop them for a turn, or maybe Orcus, like, I don't like it. If I'm playing, like, Salamangreat, and I do that to my opponent, like, I know my turn, I'm probably not killing them, because they're not, unless they're bad and leave a Link monster up, but I'm probably not killing them, and I'm probably just ending with 1 interruption and my salad board, which is still going to lose next turn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't like those cards and decks that can't capitalize on their following turn.
Yeah, so that's the same kind of thing with the red reboot, right? Like,
Yeah,
unless you can kill them when you resolve that card or the turn after, like, it's just a straight -1, or in red reboot's case, it's a -2.
-2.
Yeah. So they do have niche decks, and not like Sky Striker's not going to play Droll,
Right.
But okay, so we talked a lot about the meta and, like, current game. What would you say your favorite format in the game's history was?
In my favorite format?
Yeah.
I'm probably very biased, but it would be a Zoo format, 2017 Nationals.
Okay.
I had done very well in Zoo format, so I know that's very biased. But the thing is, you would never really get OTK'd by Zoo. So it was really nice that it was always a war of attrition and who knew how to resource management better. Even if you got Dimensional Barrier, like, half your deck was to deal with, boards, like, board wipes or My Bodies or Econs, stuff like that. So even getting D-Barrier, you lost a turn and you would lose 1 to 2 cards in advantage probably, but you weren't losing the game because your opponent can't kill you the following turn. So that's a format that, unless you were getting, like, D-barriered multiple turns in a row, or if, like, Imperial Order was up, it felt like you could always play and outplay your opponent. Actually, the guy, or I know it's only one guy now, but there used to be 2 guys that did MST TV.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
whatever.
I played one of them in top 32 at Nationals, and, like, that was an example of just, like, I don't mean to be arrogant or anything like that, but an example of how the better player won in a game that I shouldn't have won, sort of thing. He played, no, don't get me wrong, he played very well. It came down to, like, micro mistakes that, outside looking in, or maybe even he didn't even realize that he had made. But, like, I noticed them and was able to capitalize them. So I love formats like that. it did feel a little bit reminiscent of that. You know, if Super Poly were gone and I was playing Salamangreat Mirrors all day, it would feel very similar to that. But Salamangreat can kill, so it is a bit different because of Fusion of Fire. But yeah,
Fusion Fire is hell of a card.
I mean,
right. But it's not something you can't play around, which I like.
Yeah, Zoo format was my first format, which I had an absolute blast learning it, and I definitely could tell it taught me how to play the game a lot better by managing resources and just learning when to do certain things. And obviously, it was a struggle. Obviously, it was a very expensive format, and trying to figure out all the new mechanics was pretty difficult for me. Did you ever have, like, when you first started out, what was the hardest thing for you to pick up?
Oh, man. All right. I remember at the end of 2011, the first local that I went to, and I was playing X-Sabers at the time.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, honestly, that might be my favorite deck, but it's not my favorite format. But I went and got thrashed, and it was almost because I honestly just didn't understand. I understood the most basic concepts of the game, I guess, but I didn't. It was I was getting lost in that. I kind of learned my combos, but I didn't know how to play against the decks I was playing against. It wasn't even that I didn't know what the decks did. I just didn't know how to play against them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I remember this guy named Brad who just always won locals. This was in Tennessee, and maybe if he hears this, give him a good laugh. But they always told me if I could win a local, they'd let me be on their Yu-Gi-Oh team. And 13-year-old Marcus thought, that was basically the goal at the time. The goal was to be the best at my locals. And I remember playing against him and getting thrashed over and over. And I thought to myself, maybe it's my deck. So I switched and started playing what everyone else was playing, Plant Synchro. And that was not the case. It was just I did not know how to play the game very well. And but eventually I did end up beating Brad in the finals of a local, and everyone was going crazy. And of course, they still didn't let me on their team.
Those bastards.
Yeah, those bastards, huh? Jokes on them. But that I wasn't playing like Gold Bulb or anything like that. I was playing like Titanial Princess, so that in replacement because I couldn't afford it, and stuff like that. But it's like it was through all those games playing with them and like learning from how they played that I began. And mind you, they weren't even playing perfectly, but they were playing far better than me. It was through games with them that I started realizing like, maybe not max seeing right away on their first special summon. Hold that card for when I know they have to summon more than once, or not bull rushing all my interruptions when they summon or attack or whatever. Holding my Mirror Force for 3 turns later or something when they have a full board rather than when they have 2 monsters. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Trying to get over like cheap 1-for-1s and whatnot.
Yeah, it was like resource management and learning to maximize the amount of advantage or how good a card can be on its own. Another format that'll teach you that like I think I had already started learning this, but another format I use to help teach new players or friends of mine is GOAT format, because I think it's really good at doing that, like letting you resource management and understand how powerful a card can be. Like Torrential Tribute, for example, is one of like the best cards like in almost any format pre 2015. Even 2015 BA format, like BA Necros, it was really good because that card can like trade into so many more cards. Or like another example is in GOAT format. This is one of my favorite plays actually. When you have, so I play Chaos. When I have like Upstart Goblin, Heavy Storm, and a Ring of Destruction, right? If I notice my hand's really bad and I need to hope to come back in resources in a way that is unlikely, I'll set a monster, maybe set a Dekoichi, set all 3 of those cards. So then you play the risk calculation. There's an 11% chance my opponent has drawn Heavy Storm themselves and just blows me out in a game I'm probably going to lose anyways, right?
Yeah.
But in the scenario that they think I'm setting a bunch of traps, they feel safe to set more as well. So they'll set 2 or 3 cards, and then they go to attack over my monster. I might let it happen. No, I'd let it happen. And then on my turn, I'd upstart goblin, draw a card, ring their monster that was on board, and then heavy, and that heavy goes 1 for 3 cards. Like it's small interactions like that you don't really think about doing because you just fear the risk of doing so, or like maybe you don't even like comprehend the possibility of ever doing that. You might just think, oh, I'm gonna activate my upstart goblin, see what I draw, sort of thing. It's things like that. You just have to be able to recognize a game state, recognize where you're at in advantage, and recognize how you can make the most out of cards. Even today, there's like, hand traps and stuff. There's times where my opponent against Orcus, right, they'll use their mermaid, discard a nightmare card, and a lot of people with Ash or Valor will Ash and Valor their mermaid still, which is pointless because they're still going to combo off because they discarded their nightmare and end with their normal board. So maybe, or let's say you had imperm. So maybe instead you let that last, and then on your turn you imperm one of their interruptions, so it's easier to play through because it's not going to stop them from doing their board anyways, or like saving it for Bardiche or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely know exactly what you're talking about the small interactions. My first locals back into the game, I actually played against you in the finals. I was playing Satellar Knights and you were playing ABC, and I just had no idea what your deck did, and I had no clue what to do. So I got pretty thrashed.
That doesn't surprise me.
But going from that to it was I don't know if it was pre-Master Rule. It was Master Rule 4 Zoo. I was in Rosemont, and I was playing against Faisal, round 2.
Yu-Gi-Oh's favorite 10-year-old.
And we were about to go into. We were in game 2. It was like 3 or 4 minutes on the clock, and he got game 1, and he summons a Zoo monster in the extra monster zone, and I floodgate it, and he scooped. And I was just like, why did he scoop? I don't understand. So just the little things that you have to pick up on, like managing your time, managing your resources at a big tier event, I just didn't get it.
Well, yeah, knowing that, even if it's a winnable game, the fact that you're going into time, and if it's in a situation where it seems unlikely for you to win, you sometimes have to just play the odds, scoop it up, know that you're going to go first the following game. And especially with a deck like Zoo where you're going to open combo almost every single time.
93% or whatever it was.
Right. But no, I agree completely. Faisal's one of the best players I know, to be honest, so that does not surprise me.
Yeah, he definitely taught me a few things just playing against him. So, all right, so we're coming short on time. Marcus, you got any shout-outs you want to do?
I kind of already did it, but shout out to Justin Singh because, if not for him, he definitely helps out with a lot of my deck choices and deck building. Shout out to my girlfriend. She tests with me a lot, especially when we were living together. Shout out to Kyle for testing with me a lot. Shout out to Ian. Shout out to you guys for having me on here. I really appreciate it. Always love talking, being part of the community. I'm sure there's other people that I'm not coming to mind right now. Oh, shout out to MetaMats, obviously.
Yeah, don't forget to shout out Brad.
Oh, yeah, shout out Brad. I doubt he'll ever see this. Brad was like, when I was like 13 going locals, he was like 30. So.
There are some people who just never go with the dream, man.
Yeah, so it's like Doug right now.
Who also has no sauce.
All right. Joe, you got any last minute questions or conversation pieces? We do have 3 to 5 minutes.
I do have a last minute question, actually.
Okay, sure.
So as you were mentioning, you were, like I said, you're part of Yu-Gi-Oh team and stuff like that. You get to test with people like Justin Singh. You also got to test with people like Jesse Cotton, Joe Bogley, and all those fun names and stuff like that when you're on Titan E games, correct?
Yep.
So arguably you have access to some of the greatest minds in Yu-Gi-Oh. How big of a difference do you think that makes in your testing and preparing for event versus someone like me or John, or before Aldo started playing a lot, where it was just us in a testing circle?
Right. So don't get me wrong. It's definitely helpful because when you're playing with better players that, like you said, have a great mind for the game, it's very helpful, especially someone like me, because as of recently, I've not been able to put the time into the game that I used to put into it, just because, full-time student, full-time job. I'm also a collegiate athlete. So
I understand that completely.
Yeah, it was extremely helpful for me because those guys, kept me in the loop on a lot of things, and yeah, they're just amazing. Like there's certain things that they figure out, especially like Justin and Jesse, that they bring up in chat, and I'm like, wow, like I don't know if I could sit at a computer for 3 hours and figure that out, in one sitting. But at the same time, the issue with testing with the same people over and over is a lot of times they'll get lost in like group thought, I guess, because like, a lot of people in Jesse's circle now, they get lost in, oh, this idea is so good because Jesse came up with it, when Jesse probably has a lot of flops. Me and Justin go through that all the time. I always tell Justin, you have 10 really crappy ideas, but then you'll have one amazing one. Because like, I don't want to get lost in, oh, wow, this is a 2-card combo. But then when I really think about it, it's like there's 10 different things that can do that same combo. Like with Orcus, for example, he was so on like the Mermail Orcus deck, and it seemed astonishing what it could do. But when you really step back to think about it, like normal summoning Candina accomplishes almost the same thing. Normal summoning Draconet accomplishes almost the same thing. Like a danger monster plus a normal summon, Neospatian accomplishes the same thing. So like, just because you see like good boards and good results, you don't ever want to get lost in that group thought. You always want to analyze more than just the deck that you're playing. Like you might think you have the best deck, but it's happened so many times where I've thought I've had the best deck for an event, and you walk in and you realize that like someone else just figured out something better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really hard because you do have to invest time into a deck before you go to an event, but you want to look at all your options. Like that's a big issue. And I found myself doing that in Zoo format. If I'm being honest, Draco Zoo was the best deck to play at Nationals 2017. But I played Pure Zoo because I was on Pure Zoo for so long, and I was so convinced it was the best deck. And I was just worried about tech choices rather than exploring other decks. So, like, yeah, I guess that's one of the big advantages and disadvantages to, like, being with these really good players.
Okay. All right. Well, we did just run out of time. Joe, you got any closing comments?
Douglas French has no sauce, but that's about it.
Marcus, anything to add at the end?
Just keep playing hard. Everyone who's listening to this, never give up. I know that sounds dumb, but I used to be one of the kids who dreamed about winning an event, and it happened to me. Like hard work, and if you put the time into it, it's going to show up. It might not be right away, but just put the time into it, I guess.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate your time for the 11th episode of X2 Drop. If you haven't checked out our 2 YouTube channels, please do so now. And I don't know. See you guys next week, but later.
Okay, bye.